If you've got big goals, if you're trying to build something that really matters, then self-honesty, well, it isn't just some nice-to-have virtue. It's the whole foundation. It is literally the starting line for any real progress. So, let's dive in.
So, what are we really talking about here? This isn't about beating yourself up or harsh self-criticism. Nope. Think of it more like self-awareness, but with courage. It's the ability to look yourself in the mirror and see what's actually there, not the convenient story you wish were true. Because from that one moment of clarity, that's where real confidence, clear thinking, and emotional maturity are born.
But that kind of begs the question, doesn't it? If being honest with ourselves is so powerful, why do we instinctively avoid it? Why is it so incredibly hard to do it consistently?
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break it all down. First, we'll nail down what self-honesty even is. Then, we'll get into the surprisingly high cost of lying to ourselves. We'll see how truth builds real strength and forges discipline. And then, finally, we'll get into some practical ways you can actually start doing this stuff.
Okay, so first up, what is self-honesty at its core? Well, it's about looking into the mirror of reality. And let's be honest, we usually avoid it because it's uncomfortable. It forces us to stare right at that gap between who we are right now and the person we really want to be. And man, looking at that gap can feel pretty brutal.
So, does any of this sound a little familiar? You justify that extra hour of doom scrolling as staying informed. You get all defensive the second someone offers a tiny bit of feedback. You feel totally stuck. But hey, it's always the economy's fault, or your boss's, or Mercury being in retrograde, right? These are all classic, telltale signs of self-deception in action.
Now here's a really important distinction we have to make. We usually think of honesty as what we say to other people. That's the external part. But self-honesty, that's the prequel. It's the internal conversation that has to happen first. Because if you're not being straight with yourself, your honesty with others just becomes a performance.
Think of it this way. Self-honesty is all about getting internal clarity, fighting your own denial and your ego's need to be right. External honesty, on the other hand, is about being transparent with other people, fighting your fear of what they'll think. One builds your character and discipline on the inside. The other builds your reputation on the outside. They're really just two sides of the same coin of integrity.
So what's the big deal? What are the actual consequences? Well, a lack of self-honesty doesn't just slow down your progress. It has real, tangible psychological costs. It's so important to understand what's happening inside our heads when we choose to avoid the truth.
And here is a distinction that is absolutely critical to grasp. Low self-esteem is when you genuinely believe a negative story about yourself. You think, I'm just not good enough. But self-deception, that's an active process of rewriting the story to avoid a painful truth. They might feel similar sometimes, but they are not the same thing at all.
So, here's a perfect example. Someone with low self-esteem might fail a test and think, I failed because I'm not smart enough. They internalize the blame. But a person practicing self-deception thinks, I failed because the questions were totally biased. They externalize it to protect their ego. See the difference? One is a painful belief, the other is a protective lie.
Okay, so if avoiding the truth is so damaging, what happens when we do the opposite? What happens when we actually lean into it? Well, this is where self-honesty becomes a legit superpower. It's the foundation for building genuine, unshakable mental strength.
The benefits are, well, they're profound. When you're finally honest with yourself, you quiet that nagging inner conflict. That vague, floating anxiety suddenly becomes a clear, definable problem you can actually solve. Your self-esteem becomes authentic because it's based on reality, not some flimsy illusion. You literally stop fighting yourself, and all that wasted energy can finally be channeled into moving forward.
And that brings us to maybe the most tangible benefit of all, discipline. We tend to think of discipline as just grinding it out, using brute force. But real, sustainable discipline, that's born from a place of radical self-honesty.
I mean, think about this super common example. The dishonest approach is setting a goal based on what someone else is doing, completely ignoring your own reality. You say, I'll study 14 hours a day. You set yourself up for failure before you even start, because that plan was never based on your truth.
Now let's contrast that with the honest approach. This is based on self-knowledge. Okay, I know I'm most productive in 90-minute chunks. I can realistically do 4 of those a day. It's realistic, it's sustainable, and because of that, it's a plan you can actually stick to. That consistency, the one born from honesty, is what real discipline looks like.
Oh, here's another one, and come on, we've all been here, right? We do fake work to feel productive. We spend hours highlighting, organizing notes, doing anything but the actual hard thing. It's a form of self-deception where we trade the discomfort of the important task for the easy comfort of a busy one. The honest approach just cuts right through all that noise. You just admit it. I'm avoiding this hard thing because I'm scared of failing. And then you take one small direct action. I'm just going to do one practice question right now. This is how you stop wasting energy and start making real progress. And here's the crucial takeaway from all this. When you approach your setbacks with honesty, you stop creating these big emotional dramas built on blame and excuses. Instead, a failure just becomes data. It's a set of data points you can analyze, learn from, and use to correct your course. It's a total game changer.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it? How do we build this muscle of self-honesty when it's so uncomfortable? Let's get into some practical, actionable tools you can use.
Look, this isn't about some massive overnight personality transplant. It's about building small, consistent habits. It starts with just a little daily reflection, maybe asking yourself, what did I avoid today and why? From there, you learn to gently challenge your own excuses. You start tracking what you actually did, not what you intended to do. And most importantly, this whole process has to be fueled by self-compassion, not self-criticism.
Now, as we get better at being honest with ourselves, we also have to interact with other people. And this is where a really important balance comes into play. Because truth without kindness can just be a weapon, but on the flip side, kindness without truth is just enabling avoidance.
A fantastic model for this is something called the honesty sandwich. It's simple. You start with empathy to make the person feel heard and safe. Then you state the difficult truth clearly and directly. And finally, you end with reassurance to affirm the relationship. It's an incredibly powerful tool for communicating constructively.
Ultimately, we have to realize that the real pain doesn't actually come from the truth itself. The real, chronic pain comes from all the energy we spend trying to avoid it. Embracing self-honesty isn't just about small improvements. It's the very first step toward any kind of meaningful transformation. So, I'll leave you with this one final thought to reflect on. As you go about your day today, just ask yourself this. What is the one truth about my habits, my goals, or my life that I am actively pretending not to know? The answer to that question just might be the key that unlocks everything for you.